That day, everything was normal. A passenger had gotten out but left his bag behind. But what the cab driver saw when he opened the bag was more than just a picture. It was the single clue that would bring back everything he'd lost years ago. This isn't a story about lost and found. This is a story about a forgotten past coming back to life. His name was Alex. He was one of thousands of cab drivers in New York City. Every day, the same streets, the same faces, the same stories. Alex was just a witness to those stories. His own, he thought, had ended long ago, or so he believed, until that rainy, dreary evening. As raindrops beat against the window, he looked in his rear-view mirror and saw an old brown leather suitcase sitting in the corner of the back seat, pushed out of sight. It looked just like an ordinary bag. It wasn't a fancy brand, nor did it have any special features. It was just an old worn-out suitcase. Just as he always did, Alex put out an announcement on his dispatch radio and asked his friends at the cab stand if they knew the owner. But no one did. As the night drew to a close, he headed home, exhausted, and decided to open the bag to look for some kind of ID. Alex parked his car in front of his apartment building. As he bent down to check the gas tank, a small scratch on the passenger door caught his eye. It was a new scratch left by his last fare of the evening. He remembered the man's face. It was long, pale, and worried. As soon as the man had gotten into the cab, he kept looking back over his shoulder and placed the bag in the deepest, most secluded corner of the back seat. Alex hadn't given it much thought at the time. When he got home, he put the bag on his kitchen table and slowly unzipped it. Inside were a few old clothes, some books, and at the very bottom, a worn-out brown envelope. Written on the envelope in a familiar cursive was, "For my brother." Alex's hands began to tremble. He had a brother. His name was Leo. Leo was an artist who had changed Alex's life forever. Since they were kids, Alex had been in awe of Leo's talent. When Leo painted, he'd detach from the world, creating entirely new universes on his canvas. But over time, that talent had become a gateway to a dark world. Years ago, Leo had disappeared during a major art smuggling investigation. The police could never find him and eventually closed the case. Alex believed his brother was dead. From that day on, he stayed away from painting, from art, from everything. Seeing this envelope now brought him back 20 years, to his brother's last days. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope. Inside was a small folded canvas and a handwritten note. The note had only 3 words. "Remember everything." Those 3 words were like a bomb. It hadn't exploded, but it had shaken everything inside of Alex to the core. His eyes fell on the painting on the canvas. The abstract painting was done in Leo's style. It was filled with complex patterns and symbols. For a moment, a detail on the painting caught his eye. In the corner of the painting, barely visible, was a small fish. Alex knew the meaning of this symbol. It was Leo's secret signature. This painting was proof that Leo was still alive. Alex sat at his old cab stand, pondering, the envelope in his hand. Walter, the owner of the cab stand, a wise man who had known Alex for years, approached him. "I don't know what to do, Walter," Alex said. "This envelope. It's from Leo. He's alive." "Is he? How are you so sure?" Walter asked. "The symbol in the painting. Only the 2 of us knew it." "But who and why would leave this bag in my cab? Is it a message?" Walter ran a hand over his beard. "Maybe so. Sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden in plain sight, just like that bag. And sometimes chasing a secret is the only way to find what's been lost." Walter's wise words offered some clarity to Alex's confused mind. Alex began to examine the symbols in the painting. He remembered Leo's notes about a special encryption technique he used to practice as a hobby. Each symbol corresponded to one of Leo's codes. Alex found an old notebook filled with Leo's notes, drawings, and clues about these codes. For nights on end, with coffee as his companion, he began solving the ciphers one by one. Each symbol he decoded shed light on a piece of the art smuggling case from 20 years ago. The symbols revealed a series of addresses and names, members of the criminal ring Leo had been involved with. Alex had become more of a detective than a cab driver. At night, when the streets were empty, he would go to the addresses the ciphers led him to. The first stop was an old antique shop. He stopped in front of it. It was closed, but when he looked through the window, he noticed the fish symbol from Leo's painting on a poster behind a painting. It wasn't a trap. It was a test. Leo wanted Alex to follow his trail. He trusted him. He went to the next address, an abandoned warehouse. Inside, he saw a giant fish symbol spray-painted on the wall. Alex nervously looked around when he suddenly felt a shadow behind him. "I knew you had the bag." Alex spun around. Standing in front of him was a figure with a hooded sweatshirt, their face obscured. In their hand was an envelope. There was something familiar in the person's posture and the sound of their voice. "If you want to know where your brother is, go to the address in this note. Go alone." The figure threw the note on the floor and disappeared quickly. Alex picked up the note. It had a museum's name and a time on it. Alex was confused. Who was this person? Why were they helping him? Or was this a trap? Despite all the questions, he decided to chase after his brother. At the designated time, he went to the museum. It was closed. The door was opened by Det. Miller, a police detective who had been on Leo's case 20 years ago and was now the museum's head of security. The surprise on Miller's face at seeing Alex was quickly replaced by anger. "What are you doing here, Alex? Haven't you given up on your brother yet?" "He's alive," Alex said, his voice trembling. "He left me a bag." "A bag?" Miller looked at Alex with suspicion. "Alex, Leo was working with the underworld. You'd be wise to forget about him." "Stay out of this!" Just then, an alarm went off inside the museum. Two armed men came running towards Miller. They were old associates from Leo's smuggling ring. They were after the bag, and they had cornered the person they thought would bring it to the museum. Alex. Alex, a simple cab driver, suddenly found himself in the middle of a major smuggling case. But this time, he wasn't alone. Miller was an ally, not an enemy. Miller, having heard their conversation, quickly pulled Alex aside. "Listen to me," he said. "These men are dangerous. We could never catch them because they were always one step ahead. But now I'll help you." Miller used his old detective skills, showing Alex the museum's secret corridors and the blind spots in the security cameras. Together, they evaded the smugglers and made it to the room where the museum's most valuable piece was being exhibited. On a pedestal in the middle of the room was the legendary painting known as The Shadow, which had gone missing 20 years ago. But this painting was a copy, a fake. Miller, who was in on the plan, whispered to Alex that the painting was an illusion. The real painting was hidden inside the small picture Leo had left at the bottom of the bag. Alex took the painting out of the bag. On the back of the painting was a microfilm hidden behind a small magnet. The microfilm was filled with evidence that would expose all the members and connections of the smuggling ring from 20 years ago. Leo had worked like a mole inside the ring, recording all their plans on the microfilm and entrusting it to the only person he could ever fully trust, his brother. The biggest secrets, after all, could only stay hidden in plain sight. The camera focused on Alex and Miller's faces. They looked at each other, both in a state of shock and awe. He was a hero all these years. A silent one, Miller said. "I thought so too," Alex replied. The story continued with the police receiving the microfilm and the smuggling ring getting busted. Alex hung the painting from the bag on his wall in his brother's memory. He was no longer just a cab driver, but a man carrying a hero's legacy. From that day on, Alex didn't just drive a cab. In his brother's memory, he began supporting young artists, teaching them to use art for the right purposes. In the final scene, Alex was sitting in his cab, looking out the window, a smile on his face. The same old song played on the radio, but this time without the static. The passengers believed he was just a cab driver. But Alex now knew what great stories were hiding behind ordinary appearances. Have you ever met someone like Alex? Someone who seemed ordinary but had an extraordinary past? Share your experiences in the comments. And if this story touched you, subscribe to help keep such stories alive.